Okay, so let us have a look at Stephen Gosson and his school of abuse. Let us look at the background first, right? So you see, I've already given you facts here. There's this date of his birth and then there's the date of his death. So these are facts. We don't need to explain this. Just remember the dates. So Stephen Gosson was an English satirist. So what we have to understand is the word satirist, the literary term. What is a satire? Who is a satirist? So as a satirist, what he used to do is that he would criticize somebody else's weakness, or he would criticize somebody else's works, or he would criticize something using satire. That is, he would be sarcastic. He would mockingly criticize somebody, sarcastically criticize somebody. So he was an English satirist. So you will understand that the school of abuse is just that. He would criticize other people using satire, using sarcastic and mocking comments. Okay. Now, and he was an anti-theatrical writer. So, an anti-theatrical writer, Gosson, by his own confession, wrote plays as well. So, you have to understand this. You have to understand what does anti-theatrical mean. What does the word anti-theatrical mean? Who is an anti-theatrical writer? So, let us understand this. It's not that hard, okay? Anti-theatricality is any form of opposition or hostility to theatre. Such opposition is as old as theatre itself. So, anti-theatricality is any form of opposition to theatre. So, I'll tell you, if you have watched my video on the mystery, miracle and morality plays, I had covered the history of drama there. And in that video, I remember I told you that, there's this drama rose to a height, then it was banned, then again it began from the church, then it was banned again, and then again it developed. So, those kind of things. Drama has not always been steady all throughout our lives. It has not been. All over the ages, drama has not always flourished. There were ups and downs in its development also. So, there were points in time when drama was banned. Why was drama banned? Obviously because people criticized it. Obviously because people did not see it as something good, maybe. They criticized it to a point where they had to be shut down, theatres had to be closed, and then it rose again. So what you have to understand, anti-theatrical is any form of opposition to theatre, and such opposition is as old as theatre itself. Now see, if today something new comes out, right, there will be people who support it, there will be people who don't support it. Even in today's world, it's the same thing. So, it's as old as anti-theatrical opposition is as old as theatre, because, they go side by side. You have theatre, some people will support it, some people will not support it. And we're talking about hundreds of years ago now, when theatre actually began. So, see, anti-theatrical views have been based on philosophy, religion, morality, psychology, aesthetics, and on simple prejudice. So, it's not as simple like I don't like theatre, or I don't like drama, or I do not like watching plays on stage. It's not as simple as that. There have been deep theatrical, there have been deep philosophical arguments. The classic example is who? Plato. Plato, like, forget theatre, I'm talking about art itself. When you take art, when you take poetry, when you take these kind of artistic genres, you will see there have been continuous opposition all over the ages towards them. So these oppositions, I'm not like I don't like music, I don't like art, I don't like painting. It's not like that. These are deep philosophical debates. So the classic one, if you consider poetry, Plato banned poets from the Republic, and in response you have Aristotle, who defended poets also. So what I am trying to tell you over here, that these are part and parcel of the arts. These are part and parcel of our life actually. So you have some people who will support something, some people will not support something. So anti-theatrical opposition can be philosophical also, like Plato, like Aristotle. It can be on religion also, like the church banned, closed down theatres. Then from the church itself, if you know the history of drama, if you know the history of English literature, you will know that the church saw the plays as a scene of obscenity, as how they were impacting audience in a bad way. That's how the church saw it. Then they banned the drama. And then from the church itself, the drama rose. They started acting out scenes from the Bible. So that's how, if you have watched my mystery, miracle and morality play video, then you would know. So this is what it is. So it began from there, rose from there again. So, it can be philosophical in nature, the opposition. It can be based on religion, on morality. Morality, how will I tell you? Say, today we have cell phones, mobile phones. So, there are surveys that are being conducted as how cell phones impact children. So in the same sense, you think 400, 500 years ago, on the basis of morality, there were opinions, there were these debates that how drama would impact people who go watch it. So, it's not something that you have to brainstorm. It's something that is a part and parcel of our life only, these kind of criticisms. So, you have psychology, aesthetics, and also simple prejudice. Simple prejudice is what? I don't like theatre or I like theatre. I don't like poetry or I like poetry. So, it's as simple as that. So, it can be as simple or it can be as complex as a psychological, philosophical debate also. So, anti-theatrical views have been a part and parcel of our life. It has existed over ages. So opinions have focused variously on the art form. So you see, it's not like you're watching something on stage and like, I don't like it. You're diving deep into it. You're looking at the form of the art, looking at the dialogues, analyzing the people, analyzing the costumes, analyzing the stage. When you're reading poetry, you're looking at how it has the emotional effect on you. When you read a piece of work, how does it impact you? So these are deep debates. That's what my point is. It's not that simply Plato or Stephen Gosson just went out there and gave their opinions. It's based on observation also, their opinions. You understand? They dive deep into the subject. So, the artistic content, the players, the lifestyle of theatre people, how do these theatre people live their lives? What kind of impact does that life have on the people who are looking at them? So, you have, and on the influence of theatre on the behavior and morals of individuals and society. So, it's much more deep. The criticism is much more deep than just on the surface level. So, anti-theatrical sentiments have been expressed by government legislation. By government legislation, theatres were shut down, and then you have philosophers, artists, playwrights, religious representatives, communities, classes, and individuals. So when you look at Stephen Gosson's critique of poetry, when you look at his school of abuse, don't just see it as he's some random person criticizing something. There are more layers to it. So, the earliest, this is an example, the earliest documented objections on theatrical performance were made by Plato around 300 BC. So, we know that. He banned poets from his republic. Even in his theory of forms, he said that poetry is, the thing over here, I've already covered this in my Plato videos also, but why I'm repeating this over here is because when you look at English literature, everything is connected. Everything is connected. That's why I take the classes also. Whatever I'm doing here on the videos, it's in classroom format. All the videos are connected to each other. If you don't understand the connection, you will not understand literature itself. So you see there intermingling of thoughts over here. So my point here is that these kind of criticisms are a part and parcel of everybody's life also. So there's constructive and destructive criticism. So since ages, over the ages, these kind of criticisms against poetry have existed. Plato is the classic example. Plato or Aristotle, who defended also, is a classic example. So Plato's philosophical objection was that theatrical performance was inherently distant from reality and therefore unworthy. We've covered this already in our Plato videos. Now let's move on further. So Gosson, by his own confession, wrote plays as well. So you see, this is like the catch over here. So this is the catch, that he himself was a playwright. So he, being a playwright, is criticizing theatre. So what did the people do then? After the publication of the School of Abuse, Gosson retired to the country. He became a tutor to the sons of some noblemen. I think he went and became a tutor. But the publication of his polemic, this polemic that the School of Abuse, the work after its publication, provoked many retorts. Many people retorted back against him because of his criticism of theatre, poetry, playwrights and all of this. So, the most formidable of which was Thomas Lodge's defense of players. So, Thomas Lodge is another writer we are going to cover. So, he wrote Defense of Players in 1580. Here again, he defended theatre, he defended the players, that is the playwrights. He defended, so to say, drama. So, Thomas Lodge, and of course we have Sidney's Apology for Poetry. This is the response to his criticism. The players, that means the playwrights and the players, the actors, the theatre, just consider drama. The players themselves retaliated by reviving Gosson's own plays. So you see, he was a playwright criticizing playwrights and poets also. And what did the opposition do? the people who actually retorted back, they revived Gosson's own plays. They enacted Gosson's plays itself to make a statement that you yourself are a playwright, and if it's not for us, your plays wouldn't be known to people. You know, that kind of a statement. So it's like the people who retaliated back, they revived Gosson's plays itself. So, you know, these are some fun facts you have to know. Now, literary term again, and why I explain literary terms, because it's part of our course, and wherever I can, I explain these literary terms. So, we have the term here polemic. What is a polemic? We have to know. Polemic is a speech or piece of writing expressing a strongly critical attack on or controversial opinion about someone or something. So this is basically, again, a real life thing that we also have. So it's a polemic. So you criticize something. Newspapers can criticize something. Magazines, articles can criticize something. So it is a speech or piece of writing, okay, which is a strong critical attack on controversial opinions. I mean, we see that everywhere. So controversial opinions about someone or something. So this is more or less the background. So you've understood this. If you have understood this, then you'll understand where Stephen Gosson is coming from and where Sir Philip Sidney came from as well. So we are going to cover the oppositions by Stephen Gosson against poetry and Sidney's defense. So let's go to the last slide. Okay, so let us have a look at Stephen Gosson's objections against poetry and how did Sidney defend poetry against them. So you have the major objections by Stephen Gosson against poetry. So the first one that he said, that there being many other more fruitful knowledges, okay, a man might better spend his time in them than in this. So what he's saying, that there are many other fruitful knowledge. So according to him, he thinks that there are better knowledge, you can gain better knowledge elsewhere, like maybe physics, chemistry, biology, or maybe history, or maybe, philosophy. There are better knowledge to be gained elsewhere outside than poetry. So you better not waste time in poetry and, invest time in learning these better knowledges. To this, Sidney defends in his apology for poetry. Sidney says, no learning is so good as that teacheth and moveth to virtue, and that none can both teach virtue and thereto as much as poetry. So he's saying that no learning is so good as that teacheth and moveth to virtue. That means, see, when we are in school, we're getting bookish knowledge, we're reading books, right? But is that the only kind of learning? No. Our knowledge and our learning as a human, as me as a person, my knowledge does not just come from books. It comes from my experiences. It comes from my value systems. It comes from the principles that I keep for myself and I learn. My parents teach me. Teachers teach me, my friends teach me. It's all these things that go into making you who you are. So what Sidney is saying is that it's not just knowledge systems like physics, chemistry, biology, history, English that you're studying in the books that can teach you. It is also the virtues that you inculcate in yourself that make you who you are. So he says that no learning is so good. The best kind of learning is that will teach you and will move you towards virtue, that will move you towards becoming a good human being, and he thinks poetry can do that. So for Stephen Gosson, he says poetry is a waste of time. Don't read it because there are other things you can read, better knowledge to be gained. But Sidney says that poetry, it teaches and delights. The main objective of poetry is to teach and to delight. And what does it teach you? It moves you. It teaches you to move towards virtue, to inculcate good values, good principles, good virtues, to actually inculcate all of these things in you to become a better person, a better version of yourself. So he's saying that poetry can both teach virtue, and no other thing can do this as better as poetry. So he says that no other knowledge system, poetry is the one that actually focuses on morality. Say, there are poetry on kindness, on nature, on love. So these things are supposed to move you so much that you inculcate good values in yourself. So this is the first thing. Second thing, he says that poetry is the mother of lies. Now, see, Plato also says this. Plato says that poetry is twice removed from reality because poets are the ones because poetry is a copy of a copy, imitation of an imitation. So art is an imitation of an imitation, he says. So the thing is, he's saying the poetry is the mother of lies, because you use your imagination, you don't use your reason. You do not use your reason in poetry, you use imagination. You don't use concrete facts, but you use your imagination to actually write poetry. So it's the mother of lies. But what does Sidney say? Sidney says, but for a poet nothing affirms and therefore never lieth. So this is something which I tell everyone. Okay, there have been students, young students, okay, maybe in the 12th standard, or maybe who have just entered college and who are pursuing English literature. They always tell me that, man, it's so hard to actually pick up marks. You never get marks in English that much. And we've always had our teachers also say that nothing is concrete in literature. It's a matter of interpretation, it's a matter of perspective, it's a matter of opinions and how you defend it. So nothing is concrete. You cannot say this is this. You cannot say blue is the color blue. It can be something related to sadness. It can also symbolize your tears. So nothing is concrete. And because nothing is concrete, that means you're not lying. You're not claiming anything. You're not saying that, okay, the fact that I am feeling blue today means that it is sad. Okay. I mean, you are actually you're not saying it's a fact. You're saying it's a feeling. Okay, I don't know if this is making sense, but when I say I'm feeling so blue today, or I say I feel so under the weather, when I say under the weather, it does not mean literally under the weather. It means that I'm having cough and cold, or I have caught a flu. So, you're not affirming anything concretely that what I am saying is a fact. It has to do with your imagination, has to do with your feelings. It is very grounded in humanity, I can say. It is very grounded. Literature is an expression of life itself. So you're not trying to say that the world works this way. You're not trying to define that the world works this way. It is just life that you're expressing through your thoughts, through your imagination. So nothing affirms. You're not concretely saying anything, and therefore you're not lying. If you claim facts, then only you lie, right? If it's not the truth. But he's saying that nothing affirms, in literature, and therefore you're not lying about anything. So he's saying to tell not what is or what is not. Like I said, so you're not trying to say, okay, this is this, this is that. You're not trying to say that, say a person is feeling sad and another person in the same situation in a storyline is feeling good, suppose. You cannot deny these feelings because it's individual feelings in human beings. These are basic feelings. These are basic expressions of human beings. We can be sad in one situation, happy in the other. So you're not saying you have to be sad, you have to be happy. Because these are subjective in nature, cannot define anything. It differs from person to person. So what happens is you're not saying that it is this or it is not this. You're not defining anything. You're just expressing situations, expressing yourself. So, he's saying that it's not to tell what is or what is not, but what should or should not be. So, when you say, okay, let's take an example. Suppose suppose a death has taken place. This is just an example, just to make you understand. A death has taken place. One character is shown that character is crying, and then another character is there, that character is laughing. So, what will that teach you as morality? That don't rain on, you do not laugh at somebody's loss. You do not laugh at somebody's hardship. You do not laugh at somebody's death. What you're supposed to do is actually, that contrast, when they put this sadness and happiness together, that contrast will actually teach you what? Morality. It will teach you etiquette sometimes. It will teach you morality sometimes. It will teach you what is good, what is bad. But it is not defining anything. It is just inculcating you with a perspective. It is just teaching you morality. So it is something which should or should not be. You're not saying it is this or it is that, but you're saying it should be this, it should not be this. So technically, a poet nothing affirms, so therefore never lieth. To tell not what it is, end being to tell not what it is or what is not, but what should or should not be. So the question of truth or falsehood would arise only when a person insists on telling a fact. When you claim a fact, then only truth and lie will come, right? But the poet does not present fact but fiction, embodying truth of an ideal kind. So like I said, okay, like you say, all that glitters is not gold, okay? it is a fact in one way, fact, but is it a real fact, like theoretically proved fact? It's not. You're claiming all that glitters is not gold. So, it has to highlight, it can tell you about greed. It can tell you about, say, a perspective towards things, about what you have to strive for, what will drive you. It's going to the morality aspect of things. It tells you about the truth of an ideal kind, what you should strive for. I have already said this, that human beings are obsessed with the idea of control. We want control over everything in our lives, and we want to strive for an ideal. Today, when we talk about good and bad, there's an ideal, there's a bar that we have set. This is good, this is bad. So we strive towards either good or we strive towards either bad. There's a bar through which we judge, right? So literature gives you an ideal. Through fiction, it creates an ideal over there. This ideal is what you have to strive for. When you read poetry, when you read literature, when you read fiction, it teaches you to strive for a particular ideal. So you're not claiming facts, you're not theoretically proving anything, but you're actually striving towards truth, love, hate, kindness. If you talk about, say, basic emotions also, like sadness, like laughter, you cannot negate these things. These are actually part of our lives, and through literature, we are actually striving towards the goods, or we are actually learning the distinction between good and bad. So because it's an expression of life itself. So this is his second, the second defense against poetry, or the criticism. Then Stephen Gosson says that it is the nurse of abuse, infecting us with many pestilent desires. So basically, I'm just saying, okay, so you're reading a particular, say, fantasy genre, you're reading about magic, you're reading about, and he's saying that according to Gosson, I'm giving an example, okay, so according to Gosson, he says that it infects us with many pestilent desires. So technically, if you're reading about the Victorian era, or you're reading about, say, fantasy genre, it will give you desires of, say, escapism. It will give you desires for magic, which in reality don't exist, okay? I mean, there's a whole debate regarding that, but I'm just saying in general. So these kind of things don't exist, okay? And he's saying that because they don't exist, because they are falsehood, so it might derail you from life, it might derail you from fact, and it might derail you from the realities of life. That is basically the idea. I'm giving an example for explanation. That is basically the idea. So to this charge, Sidney replies that poetry does not abuse man's wit, but it's man's wit that abuses poetry. So basically over here, you have to understand, it is not, he's saying that it is not poetry that abuses man's wit, your understanding, or your sensibility, or your belief system. It is man's belief system that abuses poetry. Okay, so it is not that poetry, I'm giving this example, again I'm giving an example to make you understand. You read a poem about, say, somebody, example, this is just an example, that somebody is yelling at somebody. Okay, you're reading a poem on that, and you'll read it. The point of the poem is probably to tell you not to yell at someone. When you're seeing that somebody is yelling at somebody and somebody is crying or suffering, so the point of the poem is to tell you that you're not supposed to yell at someone. I hope you're understanding this. But you have to be really convoluted in your head, okay, to actually take that at face value and go and yell at somebody and make somebody cry. So, it is not the poem that's telling you that go yell at somebody. When the poem is talking about yelling at somebody, it's probably to teach you that yelling can have this effect, so don't yell at anyone. But if, say, somebody is that, convoluted in the head, that, okay, this poem is saying that you yell at somebody and this person is crying, okay, I'll go yell at somebody. So you see, it's his wit that is abusing the poem. That it's his wit that is not understanding the poem. So, what the thing over here, this is the point, that it is not poetry that abuses man's wit, but it is man's wit that abuses poetry. It's what you take in, what you understand from poem. Are you actually understanding the morality of the poem? So that kind of thing. This is just an example to make you understand, okay? So all arts and sciences misused had evil effects. Okay, but that did not mean that they were less valuable when rightly employed. So what happens is, he's saying that everything has weaknesses. We as human beings also have weaknesses. Everything in the world has a good side, a bad side. So he's saying that all arts, okay, be it any kind of, even knowledge systems also, you take physics, chemistry, geography, anything, knowledge also, if you use them correctly, they are valuable. If you misuse them, then they have evil effects. So you cannot say that if poetry is maybe talking about fiction, you cannot say it's bad. Or you cannot say that, okay, because science talks about only facts, it's good. You cannot. Everything, it depends on how you use it, what you learn from it, how you employ the knowledge that you have. So if you use it correctly, it will have good effects. If you misuse it, then it will have evil effects. So he says that does not mean one is more valuable and the other is not. So abuse of poetry, according to Sidney, is not the problem of poetry but of the poet. So he says that there are some poets who might maybe not really write proper poetry, who will not write poetry that has an impact, a good impact, who might write bad poems. Okay, I'm just saying it, okay, just to make you understand. There might be poets who maybe misuse this whole genre altogether. But he says that just because of those few, you cannot just pinpoint on the genre itself. Poetry is a good genre. How good a poem you write, it differs from poet to poet, right? One poet might talk about something, another poet might talk about something else. So it differs from poet to poet. But poetry as a genre, you cannot just negate it. It's not the genre's fault. It is the poet who composes, the composer of the poems. It depends on the poet how he writes, whether he writes a good poem or a bad poem or whatever. Okay, so this is what he's saying. The last thing that he says, Stephen Gosson, the last objection is that Plato had rightly banished poets from his republic. Ideal republic. So there's no place for a poet in an aristocratic state, because poetry is the mother of lies, like Gosson says, and Plato had already banned poets from his republic. We'll talk about republic in another video, so you'll understand it. But just know that Plato had already, okay, he was against poets being part of his republic. Sidney says that the fourth objection, that Plato had rightly banished the poets from his ideal republic, is also not tenable, because Plato sought to banish the amoral poets of his time and not poetry itself. So he's saying ban poets from the republic, the amoral one or amoral ones. Amoral, that is the people who did not write moralistic poetry, people who wrote whatever in poetry. So this is not like proper poetry that teaches and delights. It is not the poetry that is principled. It is not the poetry that actually induces value and inculcates knowledge systems. It's not that poetry. These are amoral poets who did not write good poetry, who talked about controversial topics. So he's saying that Plato probably wanted to ban amoral poets from his republic, but he did not want to ban poetry. So Plato banned poets but not poetry. This is what Sidney is saying. And Plato himself believed that poetry is divinely inspired. So, this is, in short, rather, the major objections of Stephen Gosson against poetry and Sidney's response and defense of poetry. My target over here was to just explain it as simply as possible. So I hope this is clear. With this, we're done with this topic actually, because here I just wanted to give you some few pointers and the background, which was very, very important. So with this, we're done. We've covered Stephen Gosson. We've covered anti-theatricality. We've covered Stephen Gosson's school of abuse, the objections to poetry. And we've covered Sidney's response and defense of poetry in his apology for poetry. So we're done for this video today, guys. I hope that this video has been helpful for you. And if it has, then please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe to my channel for similar content. And till we meet again, I really hope that you stay healthy and happy. See you in the next one, guys.